My father forced me to go to my perfect sister's wedding, saying he'd cut off my college funds. He never knew I'd already graduated as valedictorian and earned six figures. Minutes before the ceremony, I quietly gave him an envelope when he saw what was inside. Can you imagine your own father holding your education hostage, barking threats down the phone? What he didn't know. I'd already secretly graduated valedictorian, making six figures, and was about to unleash a truth bomb that would shatter his entire world. My dad's voice crackled through the phone, sharp and final. You're going to that wedding whether you like it or not, Laura. Miss it? And I'm done paying for your education. You hear me? I sat there in my small apartment in Portland, Oregon, staring at an acceptance letter on my desk. It was for a graduate program in environmental engineering, something I'd earned entirely on my own merit, something nobody in my family even knew existed. My name's Laura, and I'm 22. And for most of my life, I've been the invisible daughter. My younger sister, Jessica, she was the golden child. The one who could do no wrong. Every achievement, a national holiday. Me? I was just the backup plan. The disappointment. The one who existed to make Jessica look better by comparison. This wedding my father was threatening me over. It was Jessica's big day. She was marrying Trevor, some commercial real estate guy from a wealthy family. I'd met him twice, and both times he'd looked right through me like I was part of the furniture. Honestly, they were perfect for each other, both so absorbed in themselves they could barely see past their own reflections. Dad, I said, trying to keep my voice even, I have exams that week. It was a complete lie. I'd actually graduated 3 weeks earlier. Summa cum laude. Valedictorian, even. I'd walked across that stage, delivered a speech, and accepted a job offer for $110,000 a year. None of them knew. I'd stopped sharing my accomplishments with them years ago. What was the point? They just didn't care. Exams can wait, he snapped. Your sister's wedding happens once. You think your mother and I struggled to put you through school so you could skip family obligations? Struggled? I almost laughed, but bit it back. Struggled, they'd paid my first semester tuition 4 years ago, and then held it over my head like they'd bought me a palace. After that, I took out loans. I worked 3 part-time jobs. I applied for every scholarship. I paid my own way. While they threw money at Jessica's sorority fees, her spring break trips, her designer wardrobe. I'll think about it, I said. You'll do more than think about it. You'll be there, in a dress, with a smile on your face, or you can forget about me writing another tuition check. Your choice. He hung up before I could respond. I set my phone down. My small studio apartment might not have been much, a kitchenette, a bathroom that sometimes smelled like the neighbor's cooking, but it was mine. Every piece of furniture, every dish, every book. Paid for with my money. My family had no idea I'd been financially independent for years. The tuition threat? It was laughable. There was no tuition left to pay. I'd finished my degree, graduated at the top of my class, and landed a position at Thornberry Systems, one of the top environmental engineering firms in the Pacific Northwest. I was set to start in 2 weeks, right after Jessica's wedding, which I had zero intention of attending. But my father didn't know that. Neither did my mother. And Jessica? She probably didn't even know I existed half the time. I scrolled through the family group chat. Messages about flowers, seating charts, dress fittings. My mother had sent approximately 400 photos of Jessica in various white gowns, each one gushing about how stunning she looked. Not once had anyone asked how I was doing. Not once had anyone acknowledged I was finishing my final year of college. When I'd mentioned my graduation date a month ago, my mother's response was a distracted, "That's nice, honey," before immediately changing the subject to Jessica's bachelorette party. I'd stopped expecting anything different years ago. Jessica was the star, and I was the stagehand. That was our family dynamic, and it wasn't going to change. But what they didn't know what they'd never bothered to find out, was that I'd outgrown needing their approval. I'd built a life they knew nothing about, achieved things they'd never celebrated, and created a future that had nothing to do with them. An envelope sat on my desk, thick and official. Inside was a cashier's check for the exact amount my parents had paid toward my first semester of college, $12,350. It had taken me months to save it, living on ramen and discounted groceries. But I did it. I wasn't giving it to them out of obligation or gratitude. I was giving it to them to cut the last thread that tied me to their control. Once they had this money back, they'd have no leverage. No threats. No guilt trips. Nothing. The wedding was in 2 days. I'd already decided I wasn't going, but I hadn't told them yet. I wanted to see the look on my father's face when I handed him that envelope. I wanted him to realize his threats meant nothing. That I didn't need him or his money. That I'd succeeded in spite of them, not because of them. Maybe it was petty. Maybe I should have just cut ties quietly. But after years of being treated like I didn't matter, I wanted them to know exactly what they'd lost. Growing up, my family felt like living in a spotlight that was always pointed at someone else. Jessica, 3 years younger, absorbed all the attention. She was the pretty one, the charming one, the one who could wrap my parents around her little finger. I was practical, quiet, focused on school because that was the only place I felt like I mattered. My parents never said I wasn't good enough, but their actions made it clear. When I made honor roll, my mother glanced at the certificate and said, "That's wonderful, sweetie," before turning back to help Jessica with her dance recital. When I won a regional science fair, my father patted me on the shoulder and said, "Good job," then spent dinner talking about Jessica's cheerleading squad. My achievements were footnotes in Jessica's story. By college, I'd stopped trying to compete for their attention. I focused on my studies, worked my jobs, and built a life separate from theirs. I'd come home for holidays because it was expected, but I stopped sharing details about my classes, my internships, my future plans. What was the point? They weren't listening anyway. Jessica, meanwhile, coasted through a business degree at a state school, fully funded by our parents. Parties, sorority, endless glamorous photos on social media. She graduated with mediocre grades and no job prospects, but it didn't matter. She met Trevor, and he had money and connections. That's all my parents cared about. The engagement dinner, 6 months ago. Jessica flashed a massive diamond ring, squealed about wine country. My mother cried tears of joy. My father shook Trevor's hand. I sat there, smiling politely, while they toasted Jessica's happiness. Nobody asked me about my future. Nobody asked what my plans were after graduation. I was just part of the audience, applauding someone else's life. After that dinner, driving back to Portland, I made a decision. I was done trying to be part of this family. They could have their perfect daughter and their perfect son-in-law. I didn't need to be included. But cutting ties wasn't simple. There was still my father's threats, his constant reminders that he'd paid for my education, that I owed them. That's why I saved the money. I wanted to close that chapter cleanly, with no lingering debts. The night before the wedding, my mother called. I was packing the envelope into my bag when her name flashed on my screen. "Hi, Mom," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "Laura, honey, I just wanted to make sure you're coming tomorrow. Your father's been worried you might not show up." Worried, as if they cared about me being there for any reason other than appearances. "I'll be there," I said. "Oh, good. Jessica will be so happy. She's been asking about you." That was a lie. Jessica hadn't asked about me in years. But there was no point in calling her out. "What time does the ceremony start?" I asked, even though I knew. 3 o'clock in the afternoon, but we're doing photos beforehand, so family needs to be there by 1 o'clock. "You'll be there by 1 o'clock, right?" "I'll be there." "And you'll wear something nice?" Jessica wants everyone to look their best. Of course she did. I glanced at the simple navy dress hanging in my closet. Perfectly appropriate. But I knew what she meant. It wasn't flashy. It didn't scream wealth or status. I'll look fine, Mom. Okay, honey. We'll see you tomorrow. And Laura? Try to be happy for your sister, okay? This is her special day. I hung up without responding. Try to be happy for her, as if I'd spent my entire life doing anything else. That night, I barely slept. I kept rehearsing what I'd say when I handed my father the envelope. Part of me wondered if I should just mail the check and skip the confrontation. It would be easier. Cleaner. Less dramatic. But another part of me, the part that had spent years being ignored and dismissed, wanted them to see me. Really see me. I wanted them to understand I didn't need them, that I'd made it on my own, and their approval had stopped mattering a long time ago. The wedding venue was in Beaverton, about 20 minutes from my apartment. I arrived at 1:15 p.m., 15 minutes late because I'd sat in my car for an extra 10, trying to work up the nerve. The venue was beautiful, of course. Jessica spared no expense. White roses, twinkling lights, a string quartet. Guests milled around in expensive clothes, sipping champagne. I walked inside and immediately spotted my parents near the front, talking to Trevor's family. My father was laughing, his hand on my mother's back. They looked happy. Proud. Completely absorbed in the moment. I took a deep breath, gripped the envelope, and walked toward them. My father saw me first. His expression shifted instantly from relaxed to annoyed. "You're late," he said, loud enough that a few people turned to look. "Traffic." I lied. My mother glanced at my dress and frowned. "Oh, Laura, that's what you're wearing." I looked down at my navy dress. Modest, elegant, appropriate. "It's fine," I said. "Well, I suppose it'll have to do. Come on, we need to take family photos before the ceremony." She gestured toward a group near a floral arch. I didn't move. Instead, I held out the envelope to my father. "What's this?" he asked, taking it but not opening it. "Open it." He gave me a suspicious look, then tore it open. His eyes widened as he pulled out the check. "What is this?" he repeated, but his tone had changed. He wasn't annoyed anymore. He was confused. "It's a check for $12,350, I said. "The exact amount you paid for my first semester of college. I'm paying you back." My mother leaned in, her mouth falling open. "Laura, what are you talking about?" "I'm talking about the fact that you've been holding that tuition payment over my head for 4 years. You've threatened to stop paying for my education every time I didn't do what you wanted. Well, I'm done. That's your money back. Now you don't have any leverage." My father stared at me like I'd spoken a foreign language. "Leverage? Laura, we were trying to help you." "Help me?" I let out a short, bitter laugh. "You paid for 1 semester and then acted like you'd funded my entire degree. I paid for the rest myself. Loans, scholarships, 3 jobs. I did it all on my own while you threw money at Jessica like it was confetti." "That's not fair," my mother said, her voice rising. "We've always supported you." "No, you haven't. You supported Jessica. I was just an afterthought." People were starting to stare. Now. Guests paused conversations, turning their heads. My father's face flushed red. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "This is not the time or place for this conversation. Your sister is about to get married." "I know. And I'm not staying." "What?" "I'm not staying for the wedding. I came here to give you that check and to tell you that I'm done. Done pretending I'm part of this family. Done being invisible. Done letting you treat me like I don't matter." My mother reached out like she was going to grab my arm, but I stepped back. "Laura, you're being ridiculous. You can't just leave. Watch me." I turned and started walking toward the exit. My father called after me, his voice sharp and commanding, "Laura, get back here right now." I didn't stop. I kept walking, my heart pounding, my hands shaking, but my steps steady. Behind me, I could hear my mother's voice, high-pitched and frantic, saying something about how embarrassing this was. How I was ruining everything. But I wasn't ruining anything. For the first time in my life, I was choosing myself. I made it to my car and gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. Part of me expected my father to come storming after me, to demand I come back, to threaten me with something new. But he didn't. I started the engine and pulled out of the parking lot, leaving the venue and my family behind. As I drove back toward Portland, I felt a strange mix of emotions: relief, sadness, anger, freedom. I'd spent so long trying to earn their approval, trying to prove I was worth their attention. And for what? They were never going to see me the way I wanted them to. But here's the thing, I didn't need them to. I'd built a life without their help. I'd earned my degree, landed my job, and proven to myself that I was capable and strong. Their opinion of me didn't change any of that. Still, there was a small, nagging thought: they didn't know about my graduation. They didn't know about my job. They didn't know what I'd accomplished. Part of me wanted them to find out, to see exactly what they dismissed. But another part wondered if it even mattered. Would it change anything? Would they suddenly realize they'd been wrong about me? Or would they just downplay it, make it seem less important than Jessica's wedding? I didn't have the answers. All I knew was that I'd taken the first step toward cutting them out of my life. And as terrifying as that felt, it also felt right. When I got home, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat on my couch, staring at the acceptance letter for the graduate program. I hadn't decided yet if I was going to accept it. The job at Thornberry Systems was incredible, but the program would open even more doors. For the first time in a long time, I had choices. Real choices. And nobody was going to take that away from me. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Jessica. "Where did you go? Mom said you left. What's going on?" I stared at the message for a long moment, then deleted it without responding. Whatever happened next, I was done explaining myself to people who didn't care. The week after I left Jessica's wedding, my phone exploded. My mother called 17 times in 3 days. My father sent increasingly angry texts. Jessica left voicemails that started confused and quickly turned accusatory. I ignored all of them. Instead, I focused on preparing for my new job. I spent my days researching Thornberry Systems, reviewing projects, organizing my apartment. I bought professional clothes. Most of the time, I believed cutting off my family had been the right decision. But late at night, doubts crept in. Had I overreacted? Should I have just sucked it up? Was I being petty? Then I'd remember the way my father had looked at me when I handed him that check, not with understanding, but irritation. My mother's concern about my dress, not about me. The years of being overlooked. No. I hadn't overreacted. I'd finally stood up for myself. 5 days after the wedding, there was a knock on my door. Through the peephole, I saw Jessica, dressed in designer jeans, hair perfectly styled. I considered not opening it, but curiosity won. "What are you doing here?" I asked, door partially closed. "Can I come in?" "How did you even get my address?" "Mom had it from when you moved in." "Can I please come in? We need to talk." I hesitated, then stepped aside. Jessica walked in and looked around, her nose wrinkling slightly. I knew what she was thinking. My small, simple place was nothing like the luxury condo she and Trevor had just moved into. "What do you want, Jessica?" She turned to face me, and I was surprised to see tears in her eyes. "I want to know why you ruined my wedding." "I didn't ruin your wedding. I left before it even started." "Exactly. You left, and it caused this huge scene. Mom spent the entire ceremony crying. Dad was furious. Everyone was asking where you were and what happened. Do you have any idea how embarrassing that was? I crossed my arms. I'm sorry my absence was inconvenient for you. That's not what I meant. She wiped at her eyes, smudging her mascara. I just don't understand. Why would you do that? Why would you give Dad that money and just walk out? Because I'm tired of being treated like I don't matter. What are you talking about? You matter. You're my sister. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Really? When's the last time you asked me how I was doing? When's the last time Mom or Dad came to one of my events or celebrated one of my accomplishments? Jessica looked genuinely confused. What accomplishments? And there it was. The proof that I'd been invisible all along. I graduated 3 weeks ago, I said quietly. Summa cum laude. Valedictorian. I gave a speech at the ceremony. None of you came. Because none of you knew. I didn't tell you because I knew you wouldn't care. Her mouth fell open. You graduated. Why didn't you say anything? Because every time I tried to talk about my life, your mom or dad changed the subject to talk about you. Your sorority, your boyfriend, your wedding, your plans. There was never room for me in the conversation. Jessica sank onto my couch, looking genuinely shaken. I didn't know. Of course you didn't. You never asked. Laura, I'm sorry. I really am. I didn't realize that you were the only one Mom and Dad cared about. That I spent my entire childhood and most of my adult life trying to get them to notice me. That I worked 3 jobs to pay for college while they handed you everything. She flinched. That's not fair. I didn't ask them to do that. No, but you never questioned it either. You never once thought about how it might feel to be me. Always standing in your shadow. Always being compared to you and coming up short. I never compared us. That was Mom and Dad. And you benefited from it. I sat down in the chair across from her. Look, I'm not angry at you, Jessica. Not really. You didn't create this dynamic, but you didn't do anything to change it either. And neither did I, until now. She was quiet for a long moment, staring at her hands. What happens now? I don't know. I start my new job on Monday. I'm moving on with my life, without expectations, without needing your approval. Or Mom and Dad's validation. If you want to be part of my life, you're going to have to actually be interested in my life. Not just show up when it's convenient. Jessica nodded slowly. I can try. I want to try. Then start by listening. I got a job at Thornberry Systems. I'm going to be working on environmental engineering projects, designing sustainable water systems. I'm making 6 figures. I'm also considering a graduate program that would let me specialize in environmental policy. Her eyes widened. Laura, that's amazing. I had no idea. Nobody did. Because nobody asked. She stood up, looking uncertain. I should go. Trevor's waiting in the car. But Laura, I really am sorry. And I'm proud of you. For what it's worth. I walked her to the door. As she stepped into the hallway, she turned back. Are you going to talk to Mom and Dad? I don't know. Maybe eventually. But not now. I need space. She nodded and left. I closed the door and leaned against it, feeling exhausted. The conversation had been emotionally draining, but it had also felt necessary. Maybe Jessica would actually make an effort. Maybe she wouldn't. Either way, I'd said what I needed to say. My phone buzzed. It was a text from my father. Your mother is devastated. You owe her an apology. I stared at the message, anger rising in my chest. Even now, after everything, he was making it about them. Not once had he acknowledged how they'd hurt me. I typed out a response and deleted it 3 times before finally settling on something simple. I don't owe anyone anything. I paid you back. We're even. His reply came immediately, that money doesn't erase 18 years of raising you. You're being selfish and ungrateful. Selfish, the word stung, because part of me worried he was right. But the larger part of me knew he was wrong. Taking care of yourself isn't selfish. Setting boundaries isn't ungrateful. Refusing to accept mistreatment isn't a character flaw. I turned off my phone and went to bed early, trying to clear my head before my first day at the new job. My first week at Thornberry Systems was overwhelming, in the best way possible. The office was modern and bright, with an open floor plan and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. My team consisted of 6 other engineers, all brilliant and passionate about environmental sustainability. My supervisor, Gretchen, a woman in her 50s, had been in the industry for decades and had a reputation for being both demanding and supportive. I threw myself into the work, grateful for the distraction. We were designing a water reclamation system for a municipality outside Seattle. I spent hours running calculations, reviewing environmental impact assessments, collaborating with the team. For the first time in weeks, I felt like myself again. Not someone's daughter or someone's sister. Just Laura. An engineer doing work that mattered. On Friday afternoon, Gretchen called me into her office. "How's your first week been?" she asked. "Good. Really good. I'm learning a lot. You're doing excellent work. I've been impressed with your contributions. I also wanted to mention something. We're putting together a proposal for a major project with the City of Portland. It's a comprehensive sustainability initiative, water systems, waste management, green infrastructure. If we win, it'll be one of the biggest projects the company has ever taken on." That sounds incredible. It is. And I want you on the team. You'd be working closely with me and 2 senior engineers. It's a lot of responsibility, especially for someone just starting out, but I think you can handle it. I felt a surge of excitement. I'd love to be part of it. Good. We're presenting to the City Council in 3 weeks. I'll need you to help with the technical documentation and be prepared to answer questions. I left her office feeling energized and proud. This was exactly the kind of opportunity I'd worked so hard for, and I'd earned it on my own merit. Not because of family connections or favoritism. That evening, I met up with Kelsey, my best friend from college. She was one of the few people who knew the full story of my family dynamics. We met at a small restaurant, and I filled her in on everything. "I still can't believe you actually handed him a check and walked out," she said, shaking her head in admiration. "That's the most badass thing I've ever heard." It didn't feel badass at the time. It felt terrifying. But you did it anyway. That's what matters. She took a sip of her wine. "Have you heard from them since Jessica came by?" "My dad keeps texting. My mom leaves voicemails. I've been ignoring most of it." "Good. You don't owe them anything, Laura. You've been taking care of yourself for years. They just didn't notice. That's the thing that bothers me the most. They didn't notice. I worked so hard to be independent, to not need their help, and they just assumed I was struggling or failing or whatever. They never once considered that I might actually be succeeding." Kelsey reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Their loss. Seriously, you're brilliant and successful. And you don't need their validation. You know that, right?" "I'm starting to." We spent the rest of dinner talking about her job, her dating life, our plans for the summer. It felt good to focus on normal things, to have a conversation that wasn't weighed down by family drama. When I got home that night, I found an envelope slipped under my door. My heart sank when I recognized my mother's handwriting. Inside was a card with a generic message about family and forgiveness. Below the printed text, my mother had written, "Laura, please come home. We miss you and we love you. Whatever issues we have, we can work through them together. You're our daughter and we want you in our lives. Please call me. Love, Mom. I stared at the card for a long time, feeling a complicated mix of emotions. Part of me wanted to believe her, wanted to think that maybe things could be different. But another part of me knew better. This wasn't an apology. It wasn't an acknowledgement of how they treated me. It was just a plea for me to come back and pretend everything was fine. I set the card aside and went to bed. But sleep didn't come easily. My mind kept replaying memories, the time I won a math competition and my parents forgot to pick me up because they were at Jessica's dance recital. The Christmas I got practical gifts like socks while Jessica got a new laptop. The countless dinners where I sat silently while everyone discussed Jessica's life. And then I thought about the future I was building for myself. The job that challenged and excited me. The independence I'd fought for. The respect I was earning from colleagues who valued my skills. I didn't need my family to validate me anymore. I'd learned to validate myself. But that didn't mean it didn't hurt. The next morning, I woke up to a text from Jessica. Mom told me she sent you a card. I know you're mad, but please at least consider talking to them. They really do miss you. I didn't respond immediately. I went for a run, trying to clear my head. When I got back, I finally replied, I appreciate you reaching out, but I need more time. I'm not ready to have that conversation yet. Her response came quickly. I understand. Just know that I'm here if you need me. It was a small gesture, but it meant something. Maybe Jessica was genuinely trying. Maybe not. Time would tell. The following week, I dove deeper into the Portland Sustainability Project. The scope was massive, redesigning the city's water infrastructure, implementing green spaces, creating educational programs. It was exactly the kind of work I dreamed of doing. One afternoon, while reviewing cost estimates, my phone rang. It was an unknown number with a local area code. Normally, I wouldn't answer, but something made me pick up. Hello? Is this Laura? Yes. Who's this? This is Trevor, Jessica's husband. We met briefly we've met a couple times. I sat up straighter, surprised. What do you want? I wanted to talk to you about something. Do you have a few minutes? His voice was hesitant, almost nervous. It was strange hearing him sound uncertain. Every time I'd met him before, he'd been confident to the point of arrogance. I'm listening, I said, keeping my tone neutral. Look, I know things are complicated with your family right now. Jessica told me what happened at the wedding, and I wanted to reach out because I think there's something you should know. What is it? He paused. Can we meet in person? I'd rather not have this conversation over the phone. I hesitated. Meeting Trevor alone felt weird, and I wasn't sure I trusted his motives. But curiosity won out. Fine. There's a coffee shop on Northwest 23rd called Brew Point. I can meet you there in an hour. I'll be there. I spent the next 45 minutes trying to figure out what Trevor could possibly want. Maybe he was playing mediator. Maybe Jessica had sent him. Or maybe this was something else entirely. When I arrived at Brew Point, Trevor was already there, sitting at a corner table with 2 coffees. He stood when he saw me, looking uncomfortable in jeans and a casual button-down shirt. Thanks for meeting me, he said, gesturing to the chair. I got you a coffee. I wasn't sure what you liked, so I just got a regular drip. Thanks. I sat down, wrapped my hands around the warm cup, and waited. Trevor ran a hand through his hair, a nervous gesture that seemed out of character. Okay, so I'm just going to say this straight out because I don't know how else to do it. Your parents have been lying to Jessica and me about their financial situation.